Hey, what's up, everybody? It's me again, Jim Artman, your host of the Art of Resilience podcast. Today, I'm out here in Lamole Canyon in beautiful Northeast Nevada to introduce to you my next guest. Diana Davis is a registered dietitian and has been practicing functional medicine for over 30 years. Diana is a good friend of mine, and I met her several years ago when I was just getting started into studying functional medicine and nutrition. We've had a great conversation, and a lot of the focus was on food as medicine. So you're going to hear a lot of that in the interview, and we kind of do a little bit of a deep dive into how we apply that. So both of our favorite topics is nutrigenomics, and something that she does with her clients regularly is teaching them how to incorporate certain foods that literally will switch on genes for longevity. Foods that will help boost your body's ability to fight oxidation and inflammation, generally just feel better. I hope you guys enjoy listening to us kind of go back and forth when we talk about that. I did try to get out of her a food that was her guilty pleasure, and she just told me something healthy. As you'll see in the interview, Diana's in her 60s and looks great, and she really is a great example of, what treating your body well through nutrition can do for you. So super excited to share this episode with you guys. Hope you enjoy the view of the canyon, and we'll talk to you again soon. Hey, welcome back everyone to the Art of Resilience podcast, where we discuss a holistic approach to what it means to be resilient. I'm your host, Jim Artman, and today's guest is a really good friend of mine and really one of the smartest people that I've ever met, especially when it comes to nutrition, functional medicine, and this is Diana Davis. She has a master's in education. She's a registered dietitian and licensed dietitian, certified functional medicine practitioner, and has been doing this for 30 plus years. She's board certified in clinical nutrition and has a master's in counseling. She studied under John Kabat-Zinn in mindful meditation, completed her postgraduate work in functional medicine at the Institute for Functional Medicine and Karazian Institute's postgraduate work in gastrointestinal disorders. Diana is the owner and founder of Health Transformations, specializing in corporate wellness programs, disease management, and culinary medicine. She's worked with several Fortune 500 companies to include Chevron Petroleum, and has even worked with the NFL Saints, which I didn't see that on your website anymore, but I remember it from years ago when we first met.
Yeah, and the Green Bay Packers.
Oh, and the Packers.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
You've got so many that can't even list even the Packers on your site.
I've been at this way too long. That's what happens.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Diana, thank you so much for coming on the show today to share your knowledge and experience with everybody. I'm super excited to get into it.
Me too, James. You are one of my favorite people, and so very smart and astute, and your skill set always just rocks my world. So I'm so happy to be connected with you today.
Well, thank you, Diana. That's really kind coming from you. So I'd like to get started, just kind of talk about how you initially found this path to nutrition, functional medicine. I'd say a lot of people that get into a career in the medical field in one way or another have some sort of what I like to call like
a healer's journey, where, there was some kind of event, that affected your health or the health of your family that, really forced you to kind of go down that path, especially, I would say, people that have gone into functional medicine specifically, um, just from not being able to find answers in conventional medicine, and then looking to things like food and, nutritional supplements, nutraceuticals, things like that, to help heal them, where, medications or the conventional medicine sort of approach wouldn't work. So,
Yeah, my journey. There were two things that really influenced my journey to go into nutrition. One was I did have a motor vehicle accident and had my last rites. And when something like that happens, it turns on, for me, it turned on a voracious drive to live my life and to learn. And live my life was bigger than I could have ever imagined, that it was insatiable. And then I also had a grandfather that was very influential at me knowing nutrition at a very young age. And he was in the army, and he also, did his army exercises and ate very modest and would fast. And he would also tell me things about plant pigments, to eat a lot of colorful foods because they would make the insides of my body as beautiful as the color pictures I would color for him. And that was way before we understood about polyphenols and what plant pigments do to the microbiome. So I would say those two things kind of drove me into a field of healing. And functional medicine was not around, as in terms of the Institute of Functional Medicine, was not around when I graduated in nutrition and dietetics. There was this guy named Jeffrey Bland that I was following, and he is sort of the push father of IFM, or Institute of Functional Medicine. But I practiced nutrition and dietetics way before that became available for me to go through a certified program. But I was practicing nutrition and dietetics within the area of hematology oncology. And I was always thinking, because of my work with cancer and then the kind of work I was doing enteral feedings and parental feedings. So I always thought of nutrition as substrates, and I always had the biochemistry pathways going through my head. So my work as a dietitian, nutritionist, was really kind of based in molecular thinking even then. And I was tracking this guy out in the Northeast called Jeffrey Bland, who has a PhD in nutrition. And I'm sure anybody who Googles him will say, oh yeah, I've heard this guy before. So he is the one that I stayed in tune with as I was going through my initial work as a dietitian nutritionist. So that kind of brought me to this new place when the human genome map was mapped out. It just flipped how I was practicing. We still had the biochemical pathways, but then now we have this whole new map that is teaching us about how our environment, our nutrition, our exercise, our stress, how we think, how that is influencing us, our genes. And that just shifted from the way I practiced in 88 to 2003 to now I've had this new map to deepen my level of practice and understanding. And that's where functional medicine came in. And I was working out in the Northwest, excuse me. And I was doing work in functional medicine, attending all these functional medicine conferences, and realizing that there is a whole world out there that is seeking healing at a deeper level. And then the field just kind of exploded with the human genome map being known in 2003. And now we have the microbiome studies that are coming forth. And it's just a real exciting time to see all of these new buds just popping open that you could apply your biochemistry in. And so that's the intellectual excitement that I still have when it really popped open. And I moved it from primary nutrition care to more precision nutrition care. So it was just it's a wonderful time to be alive and have this information, because you can share it with people who need it, and including me. So
Yeah, I love it too. It's super fascinating to me, and I remember, you know, well, was it 6, 7 years ago when we met? I was also, very fascinated with nutrigenomics, and but the thing was, like, there were several companies out there that had some tests that you could do, or you could send, if you had your 23andMe data, you could send it to them, and they would look at 20 to 30 SNPs, or single nucleotide polymorphisms, which is, for people that don't know, a single base pair mutation that doesn't necessarily change the amino acid, but could slightly change the function and potency of a protein.
right, and those proteins can affect the speed, the efficiency on how you use nutrition, and how pathways could get clogged up, if you will,
Yeah.
or you got some streamlines. And we can elaborate on that a little bit more.
Well, those tests years ago were few and far between, and still pretty expensive. And I was on social media the other day, and I mean, me, I'm constantly reading science journals about all this stuff, and so I was being marketed to some company that was offering where you send your 23andMe data in for $17. You could get this report for your nutrigenomic
Wow.
profile, that would have all this actionable information. I'm like, man, that's
That
awesome.
is
That's
impressive. I need that
got
link.
me.
$17. That's amazing. And I think one day that will be the standard. You'll walk in with your nutrigenomics, with your genomics report, and maybe a stool sample. And then the physician can really go to work. Yeah.
Right.
So that's
So so what was it that made you end up getting into corporate wellness with your business?
that happened serendipitously, because I was doing work with cancer, and I got involved in working with a lot with HIV. And I was doing a lot of work with HIV in the gut very early on. This is, in the 90s. And there were a lot of people suffering with that virus attacking the gut, which is not unlike what we have now with COVID attacking the gut, So, but a lot, more, we have what is called long haulers, whereas HIV in the gut can be debilitating. Anyway, I was doing a lot of work all throughout the United States, lecturing about HIV in the gut. And someone at Chevron heard about me and asked me to come do a few lectures for their employees. And I showed up and did it, and then asked me to develop their wellness program. So that was not my intention to get into corporate wellness, but it presented itself. It laid itself at my feet. And it was really an exciting time. In fact, I just got off the phone with someone that I worked with over 25 years ago, and called me to help work with another one of her friends. So it's like a mushroom, James. Like once you do some good work, it keeps, spreading. And I'm still involved in corporate wellness with their employees, and I review their labs, and I do an intervention. The thing I like about integrating nutrigenomics is that it helps me identify the pathway that will get the most bang for the buck. Because when you're looking at a person, you're looking at, okay, how can I identify, do they have a lot of inflammation? Do they have a lot of oxidation? Can I sequester that? Are they having issues going on with their ability to detoxify, and therefore they've got a lot of toxins that are cycling through their system but not getting out, and they kind of act, little toxins, the brain and the heart like to protect themselves, so they will find mechanisms to remove the toxin, get into the blood, and go into the liver. And the liver doesn't have all of the sequential pieces and the nutrients to help that biotransformation or detox take place. That toxin goes back into a cell, and it acts like shrapnel, twists and turns, and it has a lot of downstream side effects from, it can be even endocrine related, so there's 3 papers now with toxins and diabetes. So this is not something that's woo-woo medicine, detoxification or biotransformation. So and when I'm looking at a patient and they present all kinds of symptoms, I look at, the gut, inflammation, whether they have a lot of oxidation, whether they have the detoxification pathways cleared. And how can I look at these 4 things and tell which lever should I do an intervention on to get the best return on their investment? Because there's a lot of moving parts going on. So how can I stack the biochemistry in their favor? And so it's not one and done. Everybody is treated the same. So I really love looking at the genomic patterns because it allows me to identify their weak areas, their rate limiting step, and go in for that, and go into that pathway, because then they can begin to feel the difference and see a difference. Whereas if I try to do all the parts at once, they may have great ways of, handling their inflammation. They may have a great gut. May have a great liver. So I don't know which award they have. What is their weak spot? So by looking at genomics, I can go, this is a great spot to start looking at, and I'm going to get a better return on my intervention. That's what I call it, an ROI. And in some cases, I'm looking at an issue with gut, and I call it a return on ingestion, on ROI there. So we have to look at the pathway that's going to give us the best bang for intervention. And I love nutrigenomics. And then once I understand the pathways that could be more compromised, we identify the potential nutrients that they may or may not have in their diet or in their pantry through supplements. And then we can do maybe more specific testing, because functional medicine testing is very expensive. And to start doing all this testing in pathways that may not be a problem is another not a good return on your investment. So this allows me to say, hey, let's look at these pathways that really identify with precision the SNPs, or the enzymes that you were discussing. They're called single nucleotide polymorphisms that are not working so well. And then at that point, now we're going down the right rabbit hole. We're not going down multiple rabbit holes. We're going down the one that's going to give us a good return. And that can entail help people all of a sudden not have migraines with frequency, or not have the level of infections that they're experiencing and the discomfort in their gut. It allows us to really zoom in and get people feeling better. That's the goal. And then, I am a clinician, but I act like a chef. And my goal is to get those nutrients that those bioactives that are going to help push that weak pathway and influence it to work better. So you want to think about nutritional genomics kind of like a bunch of roundabouts, and how the traffic should move diligently through these different pathways. And all of our biochemistry is connected with pathways, and these different enzymes are like the entry point for different nutrients to come in, or you can think of it as traffic, for the traffic to move smoothly. And at any time, if a person has a pathway that is not efficient, they can have, you've seen people not know how to drive on roundabouts. It gets all clogged up. And so the goal is for us to turn on the efficiency of those enzymes that you may have been born with, but now we have this whole epigenetic thing that we can influence that. We can't change the hard wire, but we can influence it, which is amazing to me. And that has had so many, I get goosebumps thinking about how, just knowing these pathways and knowing what I need to eat on a regular basis and what I would like to put more on the side and not have it with any frequency, will help my pathways move forward. So all the traffic is moving. And that's what my goal is to get my clients to get their pathways moving. But we have to identify them. And that's where I'm very intrigued with a very low cost nutrigenomic test. That's powerful. Yeah. So, it's a wonderful way to get people to, not feel stuck in, because it's hard to like say, oh, I'm not methylating well today. Why? People don't understand that, but that's a rate limiting step. And if you don't methylate well, there's a high chance that, we know the worst thing is that you can have, if you're pregnant and you're not methylating well, you can have neural tube defects. But let's back it up. And if you're not methylating well and you're not supporting those pathways, they're all connected. They're all connected, but you have ones that are more programmed to help the other ones work better. But if you're not doing that, then you can, have earlier heart disease. You can have cancers. You can have terrible migraines. You can have difficult conceiving. You can have difficulty with allowing your your thought processes and laying down thoughts and memory.
Right.
And you can have a difficulty time with handling stress, and people don't make that connection like, oh, I had a stressful day, instead of them saying, I'm just not methylating well today. They're not thinking that, but that is exactly what could be happening.
I love that you brought up methylation. I too am a huge epigenetics nerd.
Oh, you
I don't know if you
are.
remember, but I have an epigenetics diagram tattooed on me. Got some acetylated histone residues here.
Yeah, you
um,
have a.
so, but it's sort of an abstract concept, like you said. I don't think most people are like, oh man, I'm just really not methylating
Yeah.
well today. Do you mind to unpack that a little bit and just kind of talk about what methylation is, and how methyl groups kind of affect some different aspects of biology,
It's a
because it's a
lot,
lot,
and
right?
every
It's
cell is doing it every
yeah,
second of the day. And if you are
yeah,
not donating a methyl group with any efficiency, then back to the analogy of the traffic circles, then you are literally building up toxins. You're not able to clear things out of your system. Methylation is a part of detoxification and phase. There's two parts in the liver that get rid of toxins, and methylation is one of them, on the second phase. So that is a big part of detox, is people who are poor methylators are poor detoxifiers. So you may have a cup of coffee, and that coffee stays in your system for so much longer than someone else who doesn't have a methylation issue and can drink coffee at 6 p.m. Whereas some people who drink coffee at 8 a.m. are like nervous chihuahuas, and they're wondering, my sleep. So they can't get rid of this, even though coffee is wonderful. It has all these properties. There is a adrenergic effect of it, and it can overwire some people because they just can't get rid of it. It takes them a lot longer. Does that give one process? So, without getting into the biochemistry of what a methyl group is, it essentially tags another molecule to do its job. And if you are not tagging it with this, your cells feel it. If it's not there with any efficiency, then there's all of a sudden the traffic jams start happening in your biochemical pathway.
so what are some good methyl donors? Like, how do you get these methyl groups and support those methylation pathways,
Yeah,
from
no.
food,
Well,
or
and
where
it's
does that where
part
does
of
that
it
come from?
is, identifying, which pathway, which methyl, because you have MTHFR, which is huge, but then you have MTH before it even gets into your folate cycle. There is, think about a folate cycle, or they call it the methotetrahydrofolate cycle, and it connects to
Yep.
another traffic circle called transsulfuration, which connects to another cycle. And these are all, they're like teeth on a wheel. And some people's teeth aren't grabbing. So this wheel can't turn, therefore this wheel can't turn. And so if that's what I love about looking at genomics, because I can see which teeth are missing, meaning it's not missing, but it's not working with any efficiency. So we have to push a substrate, i.e., a nutrient, down that pathway. Oftentimes, I can put the biochemistry right there on the plate and say, when's the last time because let's say they have a SNP on another enzyme in the detoxification pathway called NOQ1, and they have a SNP on the MTHFR. here's a great example. Okay, so I'm going to encourage the utilization of some dandelion greens. And you're going to put that in a blender.
Okay.
And heck, in East Tennessee, you can walk outside, and if you don't use Roundup, you can get dandelion greens right there in your front yard. They're everywhere. So it's not it's not something that's real costly. You have to just think out of the box that my front yard has my salad there waiting for me. But you could take dandelion greens and put it into a blender, and you could put maybe a wonderful plant protein to blend it so it's not quite as bitter. Bitter is better, but we can hide some of that bitter flavor and maybe throw some frozen blueberries in, and you could use a nut milk of your choice, and all of a sudden you are helping that methyl enzyme that's not working so efficiently work better. In the meantime, those dandelion greens are turning on another master gene that we all have. We all have this, and it's called NRF2. And there's some great clinical data on certain foods that turn on your NRF2 better than other foods. Dandelion greens are right there. They're right there. So is curcumin. So is there is like sesame seeds. There are certain radish greens, the tops of them. So, and most people throw those away. When I go to Whole Food and they're clipping off the radish greens, I'll go up to the produce guy and say, "Can I have those?" And he looks at me like I have three eyes. And he's like, "Sure, lady, sure, you can have them." And I'm thinking, I'm turning on my NRF2. And then, let me tell you what NRF2 does. It's powerful. So here we're using, dandelion greens to activate NRF2. We all know about antioxidants, and people say, "Oh, make sure you're taking your vitamin C," which is, an antioxidant because it sequesters one free radical. One. Okay. Well, when you turn on NRF2, it's like taking a fire hose of vitamin C, like 1,000 to 1. And we don't just have one free radical. It's usually our cells take a lot of hits every day, like in the measurement of 100,000 hits. So vitamin C is nice, but NRF2 is, oh my gosh, it's like bringing in sharpshooters, to handle a job. So it gets the job done much quicker. In the meantime, you go a little bit downstream, and those dandelion greens are also turning on or facilitating that detoxification enzyme that may not be working so well. And that is NOQ1. So I have just put one food on my client's plate through a blenderized drink. And now I am working with that client's methylation and their biotransformation, or some people use the fancy word detox. That's the same thing. And it's one food doing this enormous job. Plus, I'm turning on my NRF2. I'm taking care of some collateral damage from the other biochemical pathways. And so when I turn that NRF2 on, and I'm spraying out antioxidants intracellular, this is all happening inside the cell, real protection. Then my body goes, oh my gosh, I'm going to tap down the inflammation gene called NF-kappa B. One food does this. Isn't that fascinating? So when I think about it, it just gives me goosebumps. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go eat. So when I tell clients little bits and pieces of this, because part of it is educating them so they get it of what it means to them, and then making it palatable, So that's where turning into a chef is really really what I want to do. I love cooking, and I love putting foods together so that make an impact.
Yesterday, I filmed a cooking video. Actually, I know you've probably heard Mark Hyman talk about it, and I don't know if I got it from him or just kind of started saying it myself. But this cooking theory
Yeah.
of whatever's in the fridge, you know. So I did a video, describing what that means, like how to have a successful pantry so you can take the same 5 ingredients and make 10 different things with it, and how the spices, the healthy fats, fresh herbs, cruciferous vegetables with high in sulforaphane
Mm-hmm.
like the glycosilates,
Mm-hmm.
all are switching on genes. And
I love your biochemistry recipe. I love it. Whatever you would put in front of mine, just from what you said, I would eat it. And when your body starts moving traffic around in a very uh, efficient way, and you only can get that way from shifting your lifestyle. There is a certain amount of discipline, but this is a sexy thing to have discipline because it allows you to all of a sudden, when you start eating this way for a period of time, and then you put a food like that you created through broccoli, and let's say you overcooked it a little bit. So the sulforaphane's just not perfect, you know. So you can always take a little dab of broccoli sprouts and garnish it. And boom, you got your sulforaphane right there. So, a lot of people are like, oh, I overcooked my broccoli. I'm like, there's a way that you can still enjoy the carotenes in it and the fiber, and just go back into your refrigerator and cut up a little bit of cabbage and throw it on your salad, and you can pack it back in. So when it's really a fun thing because you are eating in a way that really continues to streamline that feel of good biochemistry. That's what's so exciting about it. And yeah, so that's you and I. When we get together, we're just like we're two kids in a candy store. Give us good oils, good spices, and organic vegetables, and we are just like in heaven, right? Throwing some good protein. You got to have protein now. So
oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, yesterday I cut up a couple Brussels sprouts real thin, mixed them raw with some jalapenos, some
mm,
cilantro, some smoked salmon, put some sesame oil on it, lime
awesome.
juice. It's pretty good. That leads me to really like, so the next thing that I wanted to get in, which we've kind of already been talking about, which is that the idea that food is medicine. And there's some hurdles that both of us are very well aware of, that a lot of people have with trying to make doing this a sustainable endeavor, right? Because it does absolutely require a change in your lifestyle. And I've always said to people, if the way that you're eating, if you call it a diet, then it's not sustainable. If that's the way that you're thinking about the way that you're eating, then that diet is going to have a period and you're going to go back to those eating from a place of
Correct.
hedonistic
Hmm.
impulse, if you will. And so that's why I agree. Like, I love the cooking aspect. I love building nutrient density in my meals. I love sharing that with other people, knowing that the foods that I'm preparing for them are actually contributing to their health instead of taking away from it. And it's cool to like sort of educate them on that. It's like when they're really enjoying the food that you just made them, like, wow, this is
Right.
amazing. It's like, yeah,
Right. I
and it's
always
healthy,
find that it's
like super
easier
healthy,
to teach
you
people
know?
biochemistry when I put it on their plate versus put it in their ears. I need to put it in their mouth. So,
Yeah.
and that's a good Yeah, and people fall back to the skill set that they have, which is, maybe that's where the return on the investment needs to happen. Okay, if you're not good at cooking, let's try some simple things. And I want you to keep repeating some of this, and then we're going to keep adding on to it. And with the cost of food, a lot of people are growing gardens now. They're hitting the market, they're hitting the farmers market. They're going here. We have some beautiful in East Tennessee. We have lots of people growing things, so you can go visit these markets, these farms, and go get things. So there's ways around it, and then there's this other element, which is that word of discipline. And people often think, oh, that's no fun. Well, it is fun when you get on the other side, because now you have this vitality. Now you have this youthfulness. Now you have something that's making you want to get out of your seat and go, and not be a sludge and feel puny because you ate foods that are making you feel more dead than more alive. So there is, and I find that I'm a lot more economical in my cooking at home, and going and getting things from different farms, than some of my counterparts who are going out to eat 5 times a week. I don't even want to do that. I mean,
Absolutely.
that doesn't even
Yeah.
interest me anymore. They're like, oh, here you can go wine and dine. I'm like, bleh. That doesn't sound good.
I know it's so difficult to go out to a restaurant, eat, and not, especially with the knowledge that you got, to and not compromise your integrity. The oils that they're using
Hmm.
are usually garbage. Their cooking processes, the food sourcing, most of that stuff is
Hmm.
coming from Cisco. I mean, I know
Hmm.
there's lots of restaurants that do, local places that use, local farms, but I find that I my wife definitely
Yes.
agrees. She loves my cooking. She says I've ruined food for her at restaurants because it's just so much
Hmm.
better and higher quality, and the
Yeah.
experience that goes
Yeah.
along with that. I love sitting around a table with my family,
Hmm.
connecting, cooking together, all of it. Even going to the farmers market and procuring those materials, and like you were alluding to,
It.
it doesn't really cost more. If you're eating healthy, incorporating fasting into your life. I explained in that video yesterday. I started with 2/3 of a jalapeno because the first third I ate
Hmm.
yesterday, or the day before, and I only
Yeah. So
used a third of it for that meal.
yeah, that's about
So
5 cents that you just put into a recipe. What else? Let's like cost analyze this recipe.
yeah, so I mean, I got this
Mm-hmm.
pack of cold smoked salmon
Mm-hmm.
that was like almost $6.
Mm-hmm.
I've made 3 meals out of that so far. Um, yeah, there was a third of a jalapeno, 2 Brussels sprouts, half a tomato. I had some green onions
Mm-hmm.
that were a bunch that were
Yes.
about that
Yeah.
long because I'd been using them.
Yeah.
So I used up the rest of that. And then a little bit of sesame oil,
Yeah. So
half
this
of a
meal that
lime.
was
It's
it
just
did
that meal probably
yeah,
cost
exactly. I was going to
four or
say
five
at
dollars
less, but
or
then you were
less.
able to share that with your family too. So you also had that bond. And that is exploding into your longevity right there. People who share meals together, or share time together, they live longer. And so you're not in a car eating a hamburger because you're trying to get from point A to point B. Right. So it's a big, I mean, it's got multi-dimensional healing properties, $5. So it's just and I'm so glad we're talking
Yeah.
about this because the old adage is, oh, that costs so much. It's like it doesn't if you break it down to basic stuff and you plan to reuse some of that food that you started using in this recipe with the next meal and don't let it go bad. And that can be a goal, and it can be an exciting goal. I remember being told very early on in my nutrition career how quite boring I could be because I don't go out as much. And now it's like, yay, finally this time has come where it is an exciting thing to do the things that I have lived in my value system doing. And so it's really an exciting time to see people get turned on by their desire to push the edge of the envelope, squeeze down that risk of disease to a little pebble as opposed to a big volleyball. And every meal you're doing, that's what you're doing. And every time you are being able to feed your microbiome, look at that meal that you just said, salmon, you had some beautiful omegas floating into your bloodstream, making your cells real receptive to taking in more nutrients. You had the jalapeno pigments in there, and you had this beautiful cruciferous vegetable that you just sliced it, and so all of this sulforaphane was just waiting. I mean, you really created spa cuisine very and beautifully, and I know it was presented gorgeous too. But that said, you are shrinking even your little girl. She's turned on to eat this way now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so she
Yeah.
thinks this is the
Yeah. I mean,
norm. And I'm like, don't worry about it if your kids don't like it.
yeah.
You got to get them started to think differently. By presenting this to her versus presenting chicken McNuggets, it's a whole it's a whole different thing. And so she's growing up knowing that this is the norm. And I get turned on with going in my garden and picking things and reusing this food. So I get that really excites me to know what this child is learning now and what her new norm is.
Yeah, it is cool.
So
Definitely, I think getting kids to eat healthy is really difficult if that's like you said. I mean, you have to sort of lead by example and make it normal. And of course, children,
no, you have to
they're not going to get it
you
the
have to
first time.
repeat it. We don't get it.
Like
We don't get it the first time. It's like you expect them to get it the first time. No, we don't even get it. But the further away you get from foods that you used to think were food, the less you want them, and the more you see it for its destructive potential. But it's a walk. You gotta start the walk. You gotta take a step. By the time you take 30 steps, it's really, this is the norm. So it is. It's a change. And then talk about resiliency. Oh my gosh. People can have a lot of health issues. And if they're feeding their pathways, those health issues decrease. They still may have health issue. And then I'm living that right now. I have, a really bad back. Some people have really bad knees, and some people have really bad livers, and I have a really bad back. And over the years, my back has gotten worse from that motor vehicle accident. Okay, so that said, and I'm a poor methylator. So I think when I was being formed, I had a little scoliosis plus the impact of that car accident. So here I am living with a back issue that would normally put people in a wheelchair. I kid you not. I'm exercising. I'm in pain, but I deal with it with some of my own methodologies. I will have surgery. I'm at a point where I have to have it. But it doesn't mean, thank God there's an option, but I'm keeping my body as resilient as I can so that I'm going to fly through surgery and I'm going to have another new lease on life. And that's exciting. When I realized I've always had a methylation issue, I had that automobile accident. I'm subject. Have I not done what I have done for 34 years, I would be in a wheelchair. But instead, I'm working out, I'm doing Orange Theory, I'm going for walks, got my nutrition stellar. Those are the pieces that help me not feel depressed. Those are the pieces that help me move forward. My surgeon didn't even want to believe me. He walked in, he thought, picture of health. Then he took a look at my MRI and came back and said, whoa, oh my God, you're a crooked lady. And I'm like, yeah, I've been told that. But the point being is he didn't want to believe me because of my constitution. So I know that this is reality. And I know that had I not gotten started with my nutrition and my so-called boring lifestyle of not wanting to go out to eat and get wined and dined, it really has paid off. And it's paid off for a lot of my other clients that I've been given the opportunity to open up their hood of their car, go down into their spark plugs and see what's missing and retune their engine so that they can get on the cycle of life. And that's exciting stuff when we know that our microbiome can help us create neuropeptides that help resiliency. So how are you feeding your microbiome today? Are you getting all the pigments? They love pigments. They love the color of fibrous, colorful plant food. We used to think we absorb them. No, they're eating them for dessert. Then they create all of these metabolites that regulate 90% of your metabolism. So now you really want to think about how are you feeding your microbiome? So, and they in turn can help you be more resilient to face challenges in life because we all have crosses to carry. It's just how long can you carry the cross before it breaks your back? And my answer is forever. If you are stacking the biochemistry in your favor.
Yes, I mean, it's true. I think that you definitely are a nutrition billboard.
Oh, you can
I won't
share
tell
it.
anybody your
You can
age,
share
but
it.
I think you look great for.
I'll tell y'all I am 62. I'll be 63 this year. So
Yeah, you don't look anything close
well,
to that.
it's
It's
an
pretty awesome.
attribute to healthier lifestyle. And anyone can do it. It is not, it's available to everyone. And don't let anything confuse you. I tell people all the diets, all the things. The best diet that came out is fasting. You don't have to do anything. I love it. I love it. So I'm like, can we get into a
Right.
little bit of some of that? It's not for everyone. I realize that. But I'm like, all this information, just treat it like gnats, intuitively get tuned in to what you need to do for the best return on your investment. And James, you really need to send me that link for the $17 nutrigenomic test because that's a powerful way to get started at looking at your biochemical pathways and what is your weak spot and what isn't. Then we go in and plow in and put a lot of good biochemistry into that pathway.
Well, so you mentioned fasting, and one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is, you've been working with clients with your business for 30 plus years. Obviously you focused on the culinary aspects, which are very important to help facilitate, sustainable practice for, lifestyle changes. Is there anything else that you've noticed that either strategies that you've used when working with clients or things that you've seen have kind of helped them be successful in doing it long term? Because like you said, there is so much information out there, and it can be difficult to
Yeah, no, there's,
I don't know, I guess have the tenacity to continue to do it over time. And what maybe the other thing that I wanted to ask you about, and maybe you can talk about this a little bit too, is with the fasting. To me, I feel like, fasting, seeing when I talk to about people about it that aren't like nutrition Nazis like us, they're like, especially if they're very overweight, far from being on the health wagon, fasting seems damn near impossible. But I believe it to be sort of that gateway drug to being in charge of yourself, as it forces you to be at the interface with your physical, biological self, and then your, spiritual, energetic self that made the decision in the first place to do what is right. But it's so difficult. But if you can do it, then you like really can see that distinction between who you are and that your body is just a meat suit that you operate.
there is, even if it's time restricted eating, to gently get into that, it still allows you to do a reset with that relationship between you and food, and really allow the stronger part of you, which is our spiritual part, to take center stage. And it's the one that nudged you to begin with, to say, hey, you could do something different than what you're doing today. And yeah, this is a little bit more challenging, but I got you back. And you go into it gentle, as opposed to I think the greatest thing that people have with this illusion is that they have to do a lot to get, because they recognize that they haven't done a lot in the past. So they want to hurry up and catch up. You can't do that. That's not how your pathway is designed. Your pathway is designed for you to take steps until you can run. And so I would say the greatest thing that people could, really dial in to continue to motivate themselves is through different podcasts, develop a support group that is lifting you up versus suppressing you. There are people who would much prefer to have a wonderful meal with you versus people who want you, misery loves company. Oh, you can eat that. It's just one time. It's those little nuances that try to bring you back into, I think, and it sounds kind of all or nothing, but, what are the things that are making you feel more alive? Who are those people? What are the devices that you are using? What motivating mentors do you have? Versus, and you want to dial into more of that. And then the things that are making you feel more dead, you need to learn how to put the volume lower and lower every time it tries to show up. You find a gentle way to exit and move that way. And that's, so I really try to dial my clients, because I can't be everything to them. And I think that would be an illusion on my part too. But I try to get them dialed into, like, your podcast would be amazing. I can't wait to continue to share your podcast with my clients. I share, Mark Hyman's podcast. They don't even know this guy lives. And I'm like, oh, wow, you need to go, check him out. because it's a motive. It's, you know, nutrition and changing your lifestyle is an evolution. So it's good to get started with it. And it's not like you're going to arrive there and then all of a sudden you got everything you need. It's a constant, exciting spiral that's going upward. And that's, so that would be my biggest advice, is to look at things that make you feel more alive, and people and things that would motivate you. And you know what those are. You know it like no one else knows it. And you also know what makes you feel more dead. It's just a choice.
That's a good point. I'm glad you'd made that distinction, that it's a choice. Uh, it is, and I, you know, I kind of developed this saying a few years ago, that we all have the prescription for healing within us already. You know, it's just turning that volume up, listening to our actual selves versus
Right.
making
Good
excuses
point.
for our
Very
body.
good point. Yeah.
You know,
We all have that healer inside. Think about those beautiful organic veggies or locally grown veggies. Put some in your own. I'm so excited every time I go out and my broccoli head gets a little bigger. It's so exciting to see something grow, you know, and, you know, always, wherever I move, it's got an herb garden immediately. You know, I love spices. I think spices are just, oh, they're like elixirs. I open up my spice containers, you know, my cabinets, and I look at it and I'm like, gosh, I'm like the Queen of England was 300 years ago. I feel richer because spices were such a beautiful commodity. A really cool thing to always, you know, if you're looking for some awesome spices, you got to try teeny, and again, I have no affiliation, but teeny tiny spice dubs, herbs and spice blends, and they are amazing. So teeny tiny spice, you have to kind of remember that. Unbelievable. You know, just other
right,
things, like always throw some
right.
capers. If you're doing fish, throw a superfood. Capers are superfoods. You know, don't throw the radish greens away. Throw them in your salad or juice them. Not juice them. Put them in a, you know, NutriBullet, Vitamix. Or if you can't get dandelion greens, don't spray your grass. Go pick them out of your grass and throw them in your drink. You know, that's the kind of thing that helps you get grounded back into, you know, your body. And so there's an endless supply of things available that you can begin to do, and that are inexpensive too, and that the return on the investment is powerful.
Well, now that we've talked about, you know, how eating healthy is so important, some different ways of making that more of a reality for people. I told you I was going to ask you what what food is your guilty pleasure?
It depends on what season it is, but I, you know, I think most people are waiting for me to say something sweet, right? But I've actually kind of trained my taste buds to like savory. So I've kind of really looked at sugar like it has horns on it, and it does. So, you know, sometimes at the end, practically every meal, at the end of my meal, I have a beautiful raw salad with, you know, some microgreens on it, some radish. Radishes are my thing, you know. Throw a few of the greens on it, throw a little bit of raw cruciferous. I love shaved Brussels sprouts, you know, and I do get really good olive oil from Sparta, Greece. I get a big can of it that has high polyphenol count. It costs less than going to the grocery store. So I do get a big, and I like Oleo Estates. Again, I have no affiliation. I just have checked out foods that have a lot of nutrient density to feed my microbiome. And I want it to count oleo estates. And so I'll use that and use maybe a little bit of apple cider vinegar and some things. And then I may treat myself to 5 fig leaves of balsamic vinegar. I guess that's my sugar fix right there, and I love eating a salad at the end of a meal. It's just, if there's something, a salad. I really like that salad. I'll build these beautiful little salads that may have 20 foods in it, but it'll be two or three pieces. So I'll use what's left over in it. So that's kind of my guilty pleasure now. And again, I didn't grow up this way. I promise you, I grew up drinking root beer and eating Little Debbie's, and my diet shifted over in my 20s because I taught myself, and it has evolved every decade of my life. So this is not, I wasn't born this way doing this stuff. So your little girl, on the other hand, is growing up to know that eating from the earth that way and putting foods together is the norm. So she's way ahead, and our kids will be way ahead.
Your answer cracks me up. The worst thing you talked about, food
Yeah.
wise, was balsamic reduction. I was hoping for like chicken wings or,
No, that
some
it doesn't turn
barbecue,
me on
nothing.
anymore. I remember a time where it did, but I've now kind of moved into a whole nother stratosphere with um, with when you create good food, you keep wanting it. It's perpetual. It perpetuates itself. And so if you keep eating bad food, it perpetuates. Now you have to remember you're feeding your microbiome, and they regulate 90% of your metabolism. So if you're feeding them foods that are dead, they're creating very voids in your metabolism. So I think about being in partnership with my microbiome.
I want to ask you one more question before we sort of start to close out about that. For people that are listening, say they're so they're like, man, this sounds like
Mm-hmm.
me. I haven't taken care of my
Right.
microbiome. Maybe they have IBS, Crohn's, poor digestion, gassy all the time. How do you go, besides the food, right?
Mm-hmm.
The prebiotics, things like root vegetables, fibers, polyphenolic compounds. Um, Besides shifting the diet, is there anything else that you would recommend to people to go from where they're at to start that journey of shifting the microbiome towards health?
Yeah. Well, that prescription feeds them well, by doing a lot of colorful pigments, polyphenols, super duper desserts for them, fibers, because none of that you're absorbing and you're feeding them so they become more robust. Fasting also helps different species grow that are healthy. So we want to find ways to make our microbiome as diverse as possible. Apparently, the marker of health is having a diverse microbiome. Now you can, soon you'll be bringing in a poop bag to your doctors. They're going to examine this, and this needs to happen sooner than later. But it is the way that we support the microbiome is we get into a diversified eating plan. And so we try to not keep eating the same things day in and day out. You want to vary, and bring in elements of more plant fibers. The other thing, though, a lot of people come with such gut issues. And when I work with that, it can be that their gut's not working well. They're not, it could be as simple as, I always kind of, Karazian has taught me this, Karazian Institute. He's a brilliant clinician. You start from north and you go south. If you start the other way, you may miss something. So, for example, if a person is not secreting enough hydrochloric acid, they don't get their body ready for that bolus of food to drop into the small intestine. That creates a whole host of issues right there, right there. You know, or is it that the next place that I clinically go is like, okay, so they can do a test, a simple baking soda test to determine if they produce enough hydrochloric acid, which is real common. And if you don't produce enough, then guess what? You don't absorb your minerals. Then what do your minerals do? You know, they create 300 to 500 different metabolic enzymes. Well, if you're not getting magnesium and zinc in, guess what? You're not creating those enzymes. So you want to go from north to south with the gut. And so it, you know, to support the microbiome, all of that has to be working too, because they can create their own life if you don't have the proper digestive juices and enzymes and motility.
And
And
mastication
the other
too,
thing is
like chewing
just,
your food.
yeah, just chewing, and then resting, not trying to eat while you're finishing up a project. You eat. You eat and you chew your food. That my grandfather always was telling me, chew your food.
Right.
You know, and if you have some digestive issues, chew your food and don't drink fluids while you're eating. Wait another hour.
Yeah, it dilutes
Don't
the
dilute.
digestive enzymes from being able to interact with the food, right? Before, breaking it
That's
down before it gets into the small intestine.
That's right. If you're already low at producing that, now you're creating a greater, you know, you're diluting it even more. And so just resting and allowing digest to take place. And so that's why I really enjoy getting people to think about some fasting, even if it's, you know, time restricted eating. There's all kinds of different, because it allows them to start to reset and let the garbage get cleaned out of the body. It can happen. You know, there are garbage trucks that start clearing out all the debris in our cellular metabolism when we fast. So it's good to, you know, it's also good for you to think about, not just you, but in general, the audience, think about, if you clean your house, wouldn't you want to clean your body? You know, and get that going. And so there are some very low hanging fruit options to build resiliency in our body, you know, and fasting is an easy one. Making sure you have proper fluids is a simple one. Making sure you're eating and resting versus eating on the run, because digestion works better when you are enjoying a meal versus eating on the run meal. Doesn't work as well.
Or not
So,
eating before bed, because then
yeah,
your
right.
gut
Just
stops
simple.
moving when you're asleep, and then so you got undigested food particles that may be residing in your small intestine for way longer than they should be, which is a largely sterile
That's
environment,
right.
and that can cause
That's right. Right. And you add a thyroid condition and the motility of the gut doesn't work as well. And then now the bacteria starts coming up into the small bowel. It becomes a mess, you know? So you get people to think about just basic things first before you jump to, you can clean up your regime by just going back to some basic things like what we just
Do
discussed.
you
Um,
recommend the use of probiotics?
Yeah, well, it depends on the individual, you know, because some people don't have a very robust microbiome because they may have not been breastfed, may have come out C-section, they may have had multiple courses of antibiotics. And so they're sitting behind the eight ball. So anything that comes their way, their immune system is not supported by this nice, beautiful, thick layer of bacteria. And it's only so, yes. So sometimes for periods of time, they can really be beneficial, especially for someone who has lower diversity. But you want to select the right form, the strains, the multi strains. There's a lot of research on looking at the spore probiotics that they can increase the diversity by about 40% within 2 weeks. So that's kind of an interesting thing if you're constantly dealing with, especially autoimmunity. You want to give your immune system a rest. And if you don't have a robust microbiome, your immune system is constantly on alert. It doesn't have the necessary layers of protection. So the gut has so much of your immunity, but it's nice to have a couple of borders that are protected before your immunity gets jabbed with every meal or with every hormone secretion you have because you're stressed. So it's a matter of, I don't say I never do it. I know prebiotics are gaining favor over probiotics at this time, at this clinical juncture that people are discussing about, but that can be problematic for some people. So it just depends. And that's where you can really help people more so when you really do a full intake and you see where they started, what triggers them. And that's functional medicine is not about just doing functional medicine tests. It's about doing an amazingly detailed interview on people. So you get their story. And then if you add a little bit of genomics on top of that, you can see some pathways internally that also need support. So then I think that is where functional medicine comes in. That's beneficial because their story is being heard. They're getting to tell it. And they matter. And that makes a big difference in a person's response to therapy or response to the intervention. If they don't feel heard, they're not connected to it. So I think that is a big plus, is that one-on-one time that you give people.
I agree.
So
there's just I think after having this sort of root cause medicine, functional medicine mindset, that it becomes just like common sense to me that you would want to investigate any kind of environmental exposure in great detail with somebody before you would approach figuring out how to heal it. But like Mark Hyman says, he calls himself a holistic doctor because all of his clients have a whole list of problems. And one symptom can have many causes, or many symptoms can have one cause, So, like you very eloquently described, there is so many different things going on. There's so many things that are being affected just from one thing, that can have a significant impact on your life, like methylation. Learning that you have an MTHFR mutation, so now you're going to take methylated B12, methylfolate to serve as methyl donors, start clearing some homocysteine that's causing inflammation, and then you're feeling better. Your detoxification's better. So,
Yeah.
well, Diana,
Yeah.
it's been a
Exactly.
really awesome conversation with you. I
Yeah.
believe that this will provide a lot of value to our listeners. I mean, I could keep going for another couple hours,
Yeah.
but I don't want to take up any more of your time this morning. I know that you are always very busy, and and you're still working with your company, Health Transformations. Are you currently taking on new clients, individuals,
Yeah.
companies?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yes, I am. And the best way, if someone wants to reach out and see if I'm a good fit for them, is just to reach out, go on, my website, and you can set up a 15-minute freebie to see if I'm a good fit for you, and I can see if what you have, I would have the skill set to help you with. And my website is Health Transformations, plural, with an S, because you won't just do one. We make several transformations.com. And so that's an easy way for people to at least access if they wish to investigate whether I'm a good fit for them. In the meantime, I enjoyed this journey with you, and I look forward to part 2.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, there's so many things that we could talk about. Um, I feel myself just like on the edge of my seat having this conversation with you. I'm like, oh, what about this and this? So
Yes.
it's been
See, I
great.
felt that as soon as I met you, I knew it. I was like, this fella is so bright. So I look forward to following your journey.
Well, thank you for your words of kindness, Diana.
Of
Um,
course.
is there anything else, any final words of wisdoms that you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, I think that I've shared quite a bit, but I think that you are worth it. You are worth exploring something that is sitting there waiting for you to take. And it may not be as sexy at first when you start practicing this. You may have all kinds of, reactions from your body. Just sit and listen to it. Don't run away from it. And you've got the healer, just as James had said. We all have this healer inside of us, just waiting for us to make contact with it. So I think that, and then identifying what really gives you your power back. What are things that make you feel more alive? What are the things that make you feel more dead? Identify those and move to the light. Move to where your power is.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Diana.
So,
I really
my
appreciate you coming
pleasure.
on here. That's it for this episode of Art of Resilience. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to our show. Leave us a review, comment. It will help us get this kind of messaging out to more people. You can find it on YouTube and all your different podcast platforms. I'm your host, Jim Artman, and had a wonderful conversation with Diana Davis today. And thank you for listening to The Art of Resilience.
Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. We really hope you liked this episode. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. It truly helps, and we appreciate it immensely. And one last thing, guys, please share this video to everyone you think it may help. It allows our content to reach those that may need it most. But all right, see you next time. Peace.